after October 7th, it took something like 10 days for Francesca Albanese to accuse Israel of committing a genocide, specifically in its response, which at the time didn't include a ground operation, but included um, basically some half-ass bombing of empty buildings, as Israel likes to do. It took Gutierrez, I think, a bit longer before he made his famous "didn't happen in a vacuum" comment, essentially justifying the October 7th attack. And I think the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic propagandists have learned their lesson, which is to start earlier after such attacks in justifying justifying the attacks and essentially saying the Jews uh, had it coming and deserved it. So we're now hearing so my original plan for today, which we're going to do some of, was to go through an article that was published Thursday in the Daily Mail about the attacks on Maccabi fans um, the night before, and we're gonna get to that, but we've seen since in the last couple of days, uh, uh, basically a narrative come out that says no, these gangs that were running, in their dozens or hundreds, chasing down Jews, going to their hotels, running them over with cars, were actually responding to some horrible things that the Jews did, like chanting some things about Arabs and tearing down PLO Palestinian flags, which as the in many of these cases it was reported as violating private property, because of course these are now massive protectors of property rights. Anyway, so yeah, this is a narrative we're seeing more and more of. We're going to talk about it a lot in the coming days. Uh, I want to talk generally about some of what we've seen in the last couple of days and how we got here in the first place, which is, and that's why the title suggests that this is an achievement of the media, because the media in the West has been reporting on this war as Israel is committing a genocide, Israel is killing women and children. You'll see people commenting on these videos saying, "Look, all of a sudden, when they're up against men, they're not as brave as against women and children." I'm sure everybody who tweeted that from their basement, if 100 savages came at them, they would knock them all out with one punch. But anyway, that is what we're seeing now, and I'm joined by Marco and Richard. Welcome to the Daily Objective, everyone. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Your first thoughts just on what we've seen over the past couple of days before we get into the Daily Mail article and some other stuff.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's not a surprise that the response was so quick because the media have been spending the last 13, 14 months just tenderize the public opinion towards making anti-Semitism acceptable. We've seen the change in attitude in the West, and especially on the left side of the political spectrum, how much Israel is being painted as the bad agent, yeah, as the bad people who decided to attack the oppressed made up nation and oppressed made up people. And of course, there's the massive context drop, i.e., we are here talking about this issue now because the so-called Palestinians, the innocent people that were supposed to be sorry about, actually went into Israel and massacred, butchered over 1,000 people, and are still now holding some hostages. Some have been released, some have been killed by the same people. So, sorry if I don't feel sorry for the Palestinians, because frankly, they're not the victims here, and the people who support them in the West are just proxy for the people who organize and implement the attack on October 7th. So whatever they choose to do, however they choose to portray themselves as the victims here, as the attacked party, well, yeah, you might be on the receiving end of some chanting, people shouting words at you, but in the end, there is a difference between words and action. And of course, we know these people do not discriminate between words and action. They see it as violence. So to them, if you call them idiots, they will retaliate by shooting you, and they don't see the difference in the two things. So they're quite happy uh, to use violence instead of talking. And we're seeing exactly what this means, and we're seeing exactly how what we feared might have occurred. Going back to the less than 80 years ago. Life, memory life, um, is coming back. And why? Because we are showing the same kind of tolerance that we did 80 years ago.
And even the phrase there, just not to pick up on what Marcus said, but the chanting words at you, there is no at you in any of the footage that I've seen coming from the Maccabi fans. For example, the footage of them on the escalator, for example, they're chanting en masse a particular song that may have, dubious lyrics to it or whatever, dubious wording to it, but it's not at anyone in specific. It is simply part of, what football teams do en masse all over the place in all sorts of contexts. So it's not. Whereas what's happening on the other side is people being deliberately attacked, and the Jews being deliberately attacked and spoken to and forced to say things that they utterly disagree with, or have themselves beaten up, or their heads beaten in, or themselves kicked whilst they're on the ground, or thrown in a canal, or not be allowed out of a canal. So all of that is highly relevant, I think. But yeah, the media has been training themselves across ever since October the 7th and before, but intensively training themselves, training us, of course, as well, to be familiar with this pattern, this narrative pattern that the media uses, where it tries to plant out a chronology to excuse the actions of different groups, and to downplay how much the Jews are under threat at the moment from anti-Semitism of a violent nature all across the place. And of course, we're talking here about Europe, which is what makes this so heinous.
Yeah, just about the song with dubious lyrics, which is basically translated to "Let the IDF win and fuck up the Arabs." That is not dubious lyrics. Now, it doesn't mean everybody who sings it is not a racist, but what those lyrics mean is uh, basically win the war and prevent the people trying to commit a genocide from doing so. The irony, of course, being that the supporters of genocide are claiming to be the victims of it. But yeah, if that song was Israeli policy, there would be peace in the Middle East. So it's a perfectly okay song, but there's also the question of, and I guess these questions aren't really asked by the type of people who support the Palestinians, but what? So people were just going about their daily lives. They heard that song. Obviously, they all understand Hebrew, so they decided, okay, their response is gonna be basically violence. Daniel, you can block that piece of shit from the chat, please. Thank you. And yeah, that this was somehow no, this was planned well in advance, probably months in advance. This they in some cases followed Jews from the airport, knew when flights are coming in, followed them to their hotels to know where they're staying. They went to those hotels. They attacked hotels. Um, no, Daniel, the other one, the one in green. And yeah, so this was as planned as can be. And again, it was live streamed by them, and there's videos of them talking about hunting Jews. So you have to ignore all the evidence and to make up additional, cases for why this is somehow justified. Now, again, how it's justified because of a chant is an interesting question. And of course, they won't say the same thing about anybody who chants "Free Palestine," which is a call for genocide as well. As we saw a day or two before Maccabi's match, there was a Champions League match in Paris. Paris Saint-Germain played against I don't know who, because I follow football just when Maccabi plays, but they had a massive banner that said "Free Palestine." The I in Palestine was the map of Israel. And they had this, drawing of somebody with their face covered, because that's cool, like somebody, dressed dressed like a terrorist who kills Jews. So yeah, and this is another thing. This part of the reason why the media is already is has been prepared over the past year to correct their past mistakes and immediately react in the way that would promote what they want to promote is um, this ended nowhere near as badly as it could have if these people had been not as primitive as they are and and better prepared, even being as primitive as they are. But a day later, Maccabi's basketball team was playing in Italy, and in 4 days, Israel's national football team is playing in Paris, where that banner was shown just a few days ago. And there's a message here to future attackers. Look, you can get away with it. By the way, do people in the chat, I know you guys know because we talked about it yesterday, do people in the chat know how many of the people involved in the attacks on Thursday night were arrested? Zero. If you hear the number 60 something people arrested and all or almost all of them have been released, that was on the attack the day before and on the attacks during the match. This was not about the night long pogrom. This was previously. So not a single person of the hundreds that we see in multiple videos has been arrested by the authorities in the Netherlands. What message does that send to similar savages in France and in any other country that would attack? Maccabi's next European match is against the Turkish team, and luckily for Maccabi, the players, not the fans, because nobody would travel to Turkey. But luckily for the players, this was moved because Turkey is unable to protect Jews on its land, so it was moved to Hungary. But Turkish fans will be in Hungary, so it's let's see what happens next, and of course how it's portrayed by the media.
Yeah, and try to make it look like a scaffold between fans is so misleading. If anything else, because we've seen this kind of hooliganism. Oh, wait, not this kind, but we've seen hooliganism occur in different matches. For example, we've seen at least a couple during the Euros in June in Germany, wasn't it? England, Serbia, and Turkey, Georgia. We saw Lyon, Paris Saint-Germain in May with 30 injuries, 10 arrests. But usually the scaffold between genuine hooligans that follow the teams is usually occurs at the beginning. The fans are usually kept aside. If there is something going on, it happens before the thing. And when they're released from the stadium, usually they're kept separate again. So it's very hard for a thing to happen between them. But in this case, all the video we saw, all the video you can find online, it's always people not talking about come out of the canal and shout that my team is better than yours. They demand that people harassed and attacked chant in favor of Palestine. They are asked if they're Jews. They're not asked if they support this team or that team. It's literally the kind of stuff that the Nazis were doing in the 30s, 20s and 30s. So, well, 30s really. There's no way you can portray this and genuinely doing it thinking it's just hooliganism, just sport hooliganism, because as you mentioned, the level of coordination, the level of preparation, the fact that there were people on scooters chasing Jews down the road, the fact that they were going to hotels, the fact that they were stalking them in a way, and the fact that, as I mentioned, they deliberately were chasing Jews. They deliberately were trying to find out, are you a Jew? Therefore, I'm going to hit you. And the articles like the one we saw on the was it Daily Mail? I mean, he even mentioned then about the guy in the canal. And they say it's not clear how he got there in the canal. It's like, yeah, the guy who's been forced to say free Palestine. You can hazard a guess, can you really? But all this kind of gaslighting, this kind of making you think that it's a usual violence, it's got nothing to do with anything else. It does have everything to do with Palestine and the fact that people who support Palestine at this point over a year after October 7, are just a bunch of Nazis, really. Are just Nazis with different colors, different flag, but the purpose of their existence is the same: killing Jews and destroying civilization.
And we're going to go on to talk about a Daily Mail article. The Daily Mail, the newspaper in the UK, is an archetype for this kind of thinking, to be honest, or non-thinking, because it has a Pavlovian reaction in any context to the word football being immediately barking the word hooligan as the next word in any sentence in any context relating to football. I think if they had their way outside of the mythical win of a England World Cup, which they would celebrate as patriotism, they'd like the entire sport banned because of hooliganism. You've got to take that as into context here. But of course, this isn't about football, and that can't be said enough times. And of course, the distraction of talking about teams and football is to miss the point. A large number of Jews were visiting a European city and were rounded up as much as they could be by a lot of individuals acting simultaneously in a planned manner to try and attack them. That is the crux of the story. The rest is irrelevant window dressing to what's necessary to understand what's going on, and that just needs saying again and again.
Yeah, a point on this whole thing of, making people shout "Free Palestine." It shows you something about the mentality of these people. Look, I got a tech tomorrow. I'm gonna talk on the Daily Objective about my own experience, and it's mostly the experience of people around me. You guys were involved in the few hours where I was considered a missing person. But a friend texted me later. I imagined you refusing to give in, and I'm like, no, I would say whatever they, if I think I'm about to die, saying "Free Palestine," like uttering those words is completely meaningless. And to them, this is such a great victory, and it shows their approach to life. When they say we love death more than you love life, I'm not sure that's actually true, but they definitely don't love life. And if you want to see what people who love life look like, let's look at this footage of Maccabi fans after the ordeal that so many of them went through on the plane back home to Israel. All right, yeah, we get the point. It's not perfectly coordinated singing because with different cabins and everything, but people are celebrating because they went through an ordeal and they are alive, and that matters to them. And to these savages, you don't have to be in Gaza to want to kill Jews more than want to live. And yeah, I think that shows it. So anybody who feels like they were humiliated by having to say "Free Palestine" is looking at this the wrong way. You're alive. These savages, are still around, and that's scary. But I think that's something that in the coming days and weeks and months we'll see to what extent this what just happened is understood and acted upon. And again, if the media gets their way, it won't be. Right before we get to the article, thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, it would seem that since October 7th, live streaming atrocities is considered acceptable and even commendable. It's horrifying. Yes, that's the thing. I mean, they were doing it very much inspired by Hamas and inspired by the fact that Hamas did this and the world is on their side. And yeah, that should be a lesson to any decent human being out there. And when I see the responses to this, I wonder how many are left. But some are. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, I saw in footage one of the people had a Hamas headband on. Yeah, that's not at all surprising. Okay, let's let's look at this article, and I don't think we're definitely not gonna read the whole thing, but let's start with the headline. Again, this is Thursday morning-ish, I guess. It's long before the stuff that came out and became headlines all over the world. So the headline is Israeli football hooligans tear down Palestine flags in Amsterdam as taxi drivers fight back in night of chaos ahead of Maccabi Tel Aviv's visit to Ajax. Um, okay, I'll read some of the article, but just that headline says it all. First of all, it's a long headline. It's not some clickbaity title, although in a sense it is because it's a lie. But it tells you the story in a sense, the story that they want to tell you, whether or not it's true.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a few things in there. I mean, look at the euphemism, the new euphemism of taxi drivers. That's the most important factor about those people, is it? In this particular context, is their profession, or is it their religion and the allegiance to Palestine and to being anti-Jewish? And of course, the I've seen a footage of two Palestinian flags being removed. And of course, two is enough to make something appear like it's all over the place everywhere as a sustained thing. Whereas what we've seen as a sustained thing is on the other side, and all the footage of Jews and Israelis being beaten up. So there's already a problem with that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot make an accurate picture just looking at the footage on social media. So you have to also rely on what the people who were there said, and the people who were there, specifically the police and the local politicians, have been quite clear about what actually happened. Have been quite clear about pointing out that Jews were chased because they're Jews. They are quite clear it's not an issue of teams being rowdy and not playing by the rules. So, you can paint whatever picture you like, but if you ignore the evidence, if you ignore the fact that it was the people with a Palestinian flag running after somebody else, not the way around. They weren't escaping. They were chasing somebody, actively chasing somebody. So, put two and two together and make five if you wish, but, you'll be wrong.
Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, blame the Jews always. People try to blame the Jews for the Holocaust too. Yeah. And of course, for Kristallnacht, that was a response. There was a response to the shooting of the ambassador or whoever it was, and it was a response against the Jews, and that was justified. And it looks so similar. If you go through Twitter, and if you go to my Twitter at Razi Ginsburg, you'll see me responding to some of these people, but it really does look like that. They are either explaining why the Jews deserved it, and of course they don't use the word Jews, but that's what they mean, and or saying that it didn't really happen as we know it did. And of course, they have the support of mainstream media like the Daily Mail, which for people outside the UK, this is considered a right-wing newspaper, which you would think people on the center right are a bit less pro-terrorism. But again, when it comes to Jews, it's a different story. So the article goes, Israeli football hooligans tore down Palestine flags as they marched through Amsterdam in a Wednesday night of chaos ahead of Maccabi Tel Aviv's visit to Ajax. Videos show dozens of hooded figures dressed fully in black, cheering and chanting "Fuck you, Palestine" and "Ole" as one climbed halfway up the front of a building and removed the flag on the Rokin, a major street. Footage also shows one thug thumping a taxi with a crowbar before the driver takes off, while there have been reported clashes between the visiting hooligans and cabbies. Meanwhile, clips shared by a prominent pro-hooligan page depicts bust-ups purported to be between Maccabi fans and a group of Moroccan Ajax supporters. The account has previously shared reliable information, such as when Manchester United fans attacked were attacked by Fenerbahce ultras in Istanbul in October. I don't know to what extent, by the way, that part is true. I don't know if there might be a Moroccan Ajax supporters. It's kind of weird that the team that calls itself Super Jews would have Moroccan supporters, but you never know. And this next line is pretty much tells you everything about this reporting. Amsterdam police have not made any arrests and have not confirmed that the perpetrators were definitely Maccabi fans, despite the tensions in the city center. Daniel, do we have a clip ready? I didn't ask you to have this clip ready, but do we have a clip ready that pretty much says what the Daily Mail just said? Yes, that one.
Tom, I'm currently 10 miles outside of Beaverton, unable to get inside the town proper. We do not have any reports of fatalities yet, but we believe that the death toll may be in the hundreds of millions. Beaverton has only a population of about 8,000, Tom, so this would be quite devastating. Any word on how the survivors in the town are doing, Mitch? We're not sure what exactly is going on inside the town of Beaverton, Tom, but we're reporting that there's looting, raping, and yes, even acts of cannibalism. My God, you've actually seen people looting, raping, and eating each other. No, we haven't actually seen it, Tom. We're just reporting it.
Yeah, I believe that's Luke Power from the Daily Mail. I don't actually know that. I'm just reporting it. Marco.
Yes, I mean, you can take apart that article so easily. I mean, how many times the Jews have been on the receiving end of chantings in football? I mean, I've experienced myself, and I certainly don't follow football. So, how many times a group is picked out in some chanting, but you never see them chasing the perpetrators or causing, chaos because of that. The people who took action, the people who use the excuse of the chance in order to cause violence, are the very people who are behind the flying of the Palestinian flags. The fact the Palestinian flag were torn down. Well, so bloody what? It's not like it's a sainthood of the flag that you cannot touch. First of all, it's a flag of a made-up country. So what the heck? And to be honest, the authorities should have been aware of the fact that if you have a bunch of Israeli coming to town for a match, the chance that people will fly those flags in their faces on purpose, knowing very well what those flags represent. And as I said, some of the hostages is still held right now by the very people who hide behind this flag. What do you expect to happen? Do you really think people are not going to get upset about it? And if you look at the footage of the guy who climbed up the building and tears down the Palestinian flag, next to it there is a sign that, thanks to Progresso, our producer, who's been able to kind of traduce what the thing says. It looks like that house is probably a squat or some kind of lefty thing, because it seems to be like a protest against rents or high rents, this kind of stuff. So those flags have been put out by lefties who are trying to goad the Israeli fans, and are clearly trying to make the point and try to antagonize them. Probably they were really hoping in this kind of footage to appear, so they could just show how bad the Israelis are, even when they go and play and watch a football match, that they tear down our holy flags. But one thing is chanting "I hate you," and one thing is chasing people down the road, throwing them in canal, beating them to the ground, and taking a kind of violent action, in mass action. It's not even like 2 or 3 people did it. This was a mass event. You cannot justify that in any way. And the guy who wrote this article actually should hang his head in shame, really.
And of course, added to that, the seeking out of people based entirely on their nationality, strangers, who aren't involved, to make sure that they identify who they are, and that be the determinant for whether they're beaten up or not. I think when it comes to, I mean, the chronology of this is part of the problem. and part of the difficulty in how it's presented now. And because this article relates to the Wednesday night, and the Daily Mail is calling all of that relatively limited stuff, what we're talking about, chaos. They've already abused the word chaos for when it comes to the genuine chaos of the Thursday night. They've overused it in advance, so that suddenly the chaos of the Thursday night doesn't have its necessary weight. And of course, even using terms like chaos is divorced from who is causing what violence, to whom, and why. Which is all buried underneath loose terms like that float around and allow things to be equated that aren't equal. When you look at the incident with the crowbar and the taxi as a piece of footage, that is a classic case of you cannot look at that footage and not think that something has occurred prior to that. Now, you don't know what, and you could speculate in 1,000 different directions as to what, and as to why somebody would have a crowbar and be attacking a taxi. It doesn't look like it comes out of the blue. So to treat that in exactly the way that narrative is presented, as though it's unquestionable fact, is to swallow the narrative that somebody is with a set agenda is trying to peddle to you, and is quite different to the canal incident, for example, where the only preamble to that has to be that the guy was forced into the canal the same way he's being forced now to chant something before we'll let you out. So yeah, context is the crucial thing here.
Yeah. Yeah, that reporter is Luke Power from the Daily Mail. And Marco, you said the guy who wrote this article should hide his head in shame. If he's a decent human being, yes, but I think he is proud because, again, with the goal of that article was very much achieved in the following night's events and in the aftermath and the reporting of it since. So yeah, and again, we'll see where this goes with future events. We talked about the Eurovision months before the Eurovision happened, and the Eurovision. An Israeli singer, a 20-year-old representing Israel, couldn't go anywhere except to practice and to the competition, and had to be surrounded by hundreds of cops or 100 cops when she did so, because thousands of people from around Europe came to protest the fact that the Jew is allowed in the competition. And I have traveled to many football matches in Europe that Maccabi has played. This is the first one since October 7th, but there has never been one where we didn't need additional police presence. And people in the chat mentioned that Hungary is authoritarian, which is true, but they're also not sympathetic to the pro-terrorist sentiment, which is also true. Hungary was considered much less authoritarian when I was there for a football match, I think 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And there were more armed police officers than Maccabi fans, and they were armed with, massive, not handguns, like massive guns. In the Netherlands, the response was different, but it's also that it wasn't. They should have done more proactively, knowing that this is going to happen. Thank you, PC for another super chat. PC says, even if some people destroy the flag, that does not make a pogrom okay. Yeah, that Marco also mentioned that, but the super chat was sent before Marco mentioned that. I just didn't get to read it yet. Any parting thoughts or anything else on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly annoying, the kind of crocodile tears from the authorities, isn't it? Because they're claiming that there was a pro-Palestinian a request for a pro-Palestinian event at the same arena where the match took place, and that was denied. But it was moved a few hundred yards down the road. So really, what do you expect? I mean, are you so naive? Or did you really want this kind of stuff to happen? So it makes you wonder, yeah, now you cry, pogrom, never again, all this kind of yeah, very good words, but your action betrayed the fact that you denied totally what the nature of the pro-Palestinian stuff is. It's quite clear by now. Come on, pro-Palestinian means anti-Jews, and it's a really vicious bunch of people who are effectively supporting the action of October 7, the action of Islamic Jihad and the action of Hamas and Hezbollah and all the other proxies and monsters fueled by the Islamic ideology, who are hell bent into destroying and killing everything which looks like civilization.
And I would like to add that what you're seeing here in all of the excusing of this often is facts taken completely out of context, and chronology is being used as one of those mechanisms for doing this. You cannot divorce the sequence of events from what the events are. You've got to focus on the nature of the events, the purpose and intent of the perpetrators, who the perpetrators are, the extent of them, and not just what happened first, what happened next. For example, there was a case a year or so ago of a homeless guy on the train on the platform of a train in London who pushed a stranger onto the tracks just before an oncoming train, all of a sudden. And in the case, he was sentenced to life for this act, which nearly murdered the guy. In the course of the case, he said that the guy gave him a dirty look, and then he pushed him onto the track as a result. Now, the dirty look doesn't justify the pushing onto the track, even if it did occur, and even if it happens first. So the nature of what's going on is important to assess the relevance of what you're judging. And of course, chronology is also used deliberately by the same people to muddle things up. So in some of the joined up footage of all of these things stitched together, you'll see in the middle of it, for example, some Maccabi fans in a particular square in Amsterdam, in Dam Square, I think it is, with their red flares and stuff. And if you insert that sequence part way in after a bunch of violence, it looks like they're setting things on fire, and it's getting more and more angry and aggravated, and look how dreadful these fans are. Whereas that is simply a way of celebrating, and probably happened independently of everything else. And it's just a way, it's just what the football fans do in any location. So the chronology then is used to willfully deceive the person viewing such footage. Full eyes open, full context, full analysis of what's going on is always necessary.
Yeah, and getting together in the town square, singing songs and lighting flares and stuff like that, that is a part of the experience, and in a way match in Europe, at least for Maccabi, but I think for many, many European clubs. I was in Dam Square for some of that with Christian Klein from the Super Chat. Yeah, that was also mostly peaceful, let's say. Mostly peaceful, not because Maccabi fans occasionally decided to attack somebody, but because there were police officers all around us, and occasionally somebody decided to try their luck and attack, and it didn't really go their way then, but of course later in that night it did. But anyway, I will talk, as I said, tomorrow in detail on the Daily Objective about my experience in Amsterdam going to this match and what happened afterwards. Again, I wasn't there during the pogrom, but I'll get into more details tomorrow. Thank you, Lorasetto, for the super chat. Lorasetto says thank you. Signed, non-troll super chatter, and of course the troll super chatters. The troll chatters are never super chatting, but one of them says, "I have pro-Palestinian Jewish friends." Yes, great for you. The thing is, people have free will. So a Jewish person can be, a horrible person, and if the story you're telling is true, clearly some such people, and an Arab person isn't genetically predisposed to attack Jews. That is a choice of each and every one of those people, none of whom were arrested. Another choice of the authorities. Yeah, people make choices, and Owen Jones is not a Muslim. He would be killed in any of the countries that he advocates for, but he keeps propagandizing for Palestinian terrorism since October 7th to this day, promoting lies wherever he thinks he can get away with them, and essentially promoting the terrorist agenda, the agenda of exterminating the Jews. We will be talking about his commentary on this tomorrow on the reality show. I think this is going to be the topic for the next few days. I know today there is no TRS extra, so technically we could go longer, but as people now know, I'm a football fan and Maccabi is playing in a few minutes, oddly enough, against Sakhnin, an Arab team in Israel who the closest thing to serious violence I've experienced as a football fan was trying to come out of Sakhnin. You go into Sakhnin, it's an Arab village in Israel, and you wonder if your car has turned into a time machine because you are going back to the Stone Age. And then on the way out, there's that one road, and fans surround you, and it's not a nice experience. Oddly enough, they can't host this match in their home stadium because it's too close to Hezbollah rockets. Interesting stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, again, there is a lot to talk about, and we will be back here tomorrow talking about it. Thank you, Marco and Richard, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you back here tomorrow.